is if you go to the announcements on our course on Canvas, I've posted the Zoom URL if you want to join our Zoom meeting and see what you can do in Zoom, because we're going to use it instead of that screen projection software. Try not to cuss. Oh, someone coming in. So Speedy, she'd be too all. Ding-dong. Let's see, we got Perry now. There's Stan. Isaiah, you think Isaiah just stayed in Oregon? Hard to come back. Hard, how are you guys? Okay, if you didn't hear, if you've come in recently, if you go to the announcements, there is a link to our Zoom meeting. Our Zoom meeting ID is going to stay the same. It'll be locked. That number, actually, that Zoom meeting is my phone number here at OTC. So if you ever can't figure out what that Zoom meeting ID is, you can look for my phone number, and that's what it is. We're going to try setting up a Zoom meeting, and we're doing this in all of the different programming classes because that software we use to project over the network is not working very well. And the Zoom meeting seems to work a lot better. Everybody's liking it a lot more. So we'll see if that works for us. Plus, we're going to go ahead and I told people in the online class that we would be having this Zoom session at 3:30. So hopefully some of them can jump in if they want. They're not going to hear me when I walk off from that mic, though. Maybe they'll talk more. You guys are so good. Now, I know everybody's stressed really bad Thursday, but not as bad as me. Here, I'll show you my thing here. Tell you my story. So I came to work Thursday morning last week. I had great plans for our class, what we were going to do, and work together on things. And I had gone to the doctor the week before on Friday, and he gave me some steroid cream, you know, for my skin, just a skin condition kind of cream. Well, I went to Walgreens, and sure enough, it had ingredients in it that I couldn't have. So I talked to the manufacturer, and they went through about 4 different products that they had. And they finally found one that didn't have any mammal in it. And so it took until last Wednesday for me to get it. And I finally got it Wednesday night. So I used it Wednesday night, and I thought, oh man, I hope I shouldn't wait on this for the weekend, because I won't eat new food or anything unless it's the weekend. I'm gone for a few days. And I thought, man, I talked to those manufacturers, everything should be fine. So I used that cream Wednesday night, and I used it Thursday morning. And when I got here Thursday morning, it was about 2 hours after I used that cream. I just started hurling, and I couldn't stop. And so it's a sign of anaphylactic shock. And so if you have people around you that have allergies, or if you have allergies, be aware. Vomiting like that is a sign of a food allergy. So my reaction to that medical cream was like food poisoning. And if I would have went to the hospital, that's what they would have thought I had. They would have said, did you eat at Taco Bell or something? No, it's a poisoning from having an allergic response. So my point is, if you know anyone that's sick like that, it doesn't always have to do with food poisoning. I have some friends who say they get food poisoning every time they go to Taco Bell. They probably have a food allergy to something that they're eating there. Because even though Taco Bell might make people sick, it doesn't every single time, right? Unless you have a food allergy. The other thing about this that I wanted to tell you guys about, other than apologizing for not being here Thursday, was that if you know anyone that has these kind of conditions, that gets sick through the night and is sick a lot, this food allergy, this red meat allergy, causes a delayed reaction. So normal food allergies happen right away, but with this red meat allergy, it can happen a day or two after you eat something. So if your mom, cousin, friend is always up in the night sick, they could very well have a food allergy. And the reason I tell you that is because my life was really hard when I was sick all the time. And once I found out that I had this allergy and I was able to eliminate all of these foods and medicines and things like that that have mammal, I feel so much better. So even though it's hard and sometimes it's a pain because things like medicine will make me sick, it's so much better than being ill all the time like I was before. So if you know anyone that has those kinds of things, my whole life was told I had a nervous stomach. My stomach got upset really easily. I just had, too much stress in my life. I knew that wasn't true, but I'd been told that for so long that I started buying into it. And I would argue with doctors that said, it seems like you have really bad allergies. Not me, I don't have any allergies. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never had allergies. Well, I had food allergies, and I didn't know that that's what was going on. So you don't always get a stuffy nose and not be able to breathe. That might be part of it, but it can be food allergies anyways. So because I had to be gone Thursday, I am not changing the due date on your Palindrome assignment yet, because I'm planning on us working on that together today and having it done for you to turn in time. But if we don't get through it all the way today, I'll change that due date. So yeah, I was really planning on us having an opportunity to kind of work on that a little bit together on Thursday. And then the sub said the audio was so bad with our audio problems that you couldn't hear anything. So do you guys have a link to that video? Were you able to watch it at home, or did you not even have a link to it? Okay, that's what I needed to know. So we'll make sure that we've got all of that information, and I'll get you that link to that video, because I don't think we want to take up class time to talk about that stuff since the video is out there. But let's think about our Palindrome assignment. I'm going to bring it up. Oh wait, I'm not there yet. I'm getting ahead. Before we go do that, let's take a look at the calendar at what's coming up. So today we're looking at September 25th. We have this week and next week. Where am I? This week and next week. And then the week after, October 8th and 9th, our fall break. So we don't have school those 2 days. So you got that done on your calendar, right? No school those days. So make sure. And then another thing that's coming up is on October 25th. On October 25th, I don't know if you guys remember, the beginning of the semester, Perry asked about Tech It Out. Well, we finally found out our information about Tech It Out. It's going to be Thursday, October 25th. That's a day that we would normally have class. Because Tech It Out is such a great opportunity for you guys to see things, we'll cancel class for that day, and your attendance will be participating in Tech It Out. So let's go look at their website. It's still pretty wide open. They're not super specific about everything yet, but we can get registered. So I'm just going to search for Tech It Out. And that first item is the one I want. That's Tech It Out Technology Showcase. So this is the 10th year. The showcase is held once a year at the Oasis Convention Center, which is kind of like on North Glenstone. And they have a really nice convention center back in the back. So this will be like They'll have one big room with a bunch of companies. We'll have booths all the way around in that room. You can walk around and talk to the different people that are manning the booths, like about their company. They'll tell you about technology, things that their company sells or deals with, because that's why they're there at this expo, because they're a tech company. If you were wanting to ask them questions, you could, like how often do you guys hire programmers? What kind of skills are you looking for in entry-level programmers? What could I do to get prepared, for you to be interested in interviewing me? Just any sort of questions like that. They're there, they're available. You can talk to them about things. A lot of them have some free stuff too, like flash drives and nice, awesome things to get. But there's also presentations. So throughout the day, there will be different presentations going on at different times. Some of them are networking related, like network security, different things like that. But this year, they're supposed to have a track that has to do with software development. This will be the first time, because in the past, it's always been pretty networking oriented. But that's okay, because the networking department pays for us to go, so we're all right. But this year, we're supposed to have more software development stuff. So the deal is OTC will pay for you to go. It costs $30, but it'll be free for you guys because you're in class that day, and instead, we're going to spend our time over there because it's going to be better for you. You're going to get a great experience from doing this. Now, if you don't think you can go, then don't register. But if you register and then something comes up, I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world. But if you know you can't go, then don't register. Now, if you can't go because it's too scary, I understand that one. It is scary because you have to go to this place that you don't know and walk in and you don't know what's going on. That's part of why we want you to go, because it's a good way to kind of break the ice and get used to doing things like that. Second of all, you might be too busy that day. Well, I know you have a couple hours in the afternoon that'll be available. And for Tech It Out, you can come and go. You don't have to go in the morning and stay through the whole day. You can go if you want in the morning and go to the free breakfast, listen to the keynote speaker, get some free stuff from the vendors, see if there's a session or two you want to go to, and then you can leave. Or you can come later in the day if you're busy in the morning and you just want to go to an afternoon session. Or you could come for the last session of the day and then go to the hors d'oeuvres and door prizes thing that they have at the end. So your options are open. You don't have to be there the whole time. Perry, tell them about it. Is it good? Should they go?
Yeah.
Pretty good?
Yeah, cool things going on there.
Pretty good.
There,
do what? Yeah, you'll just drive yourself there. And that's why you can just kind of come and go however you want. Now, it is a business event, so you want to look business professional. But you guys always look pretty business professional, I think. So let's register. I'm going to click on this register link. That's where we want to go to get started. Now, if you decide that you want to look at your calendar and you don't want to register today, just let me know once you decide and we'll get you all set up. But if you can register today, this will be the best. And then we'll have it all taken care of.
Do we use our student email addresses or our personal email?
I would use your student email address because that shows you're an OTC student. So on this first screen, put in your name and, like Jesse mentioned, your OTC email address. Then your registration category is going to be attendee, and your registration type is going to be full-time student, non-AITP chapter, student chapter. And if we have any people listening from the online class, you guys are also welcome to go to Tech It Out. I'll be posting some information to your class later, but you can register now if you like. Now, I've already registered, so it won't let me go any further. But on the next screen, you're going to put your company as OTC and your title is student, unless you have some other company information that you want to put in there. But OTC and student. And then I would use your address. They don't send out much mail, but if they do, you won't get anything if you put OTC's address. Maybe you'll get junk mail for OTC from years to come, big bills. Now, after you enter in that information about your company, your contact information, they have a few registration questions. It says to just answer based on your info. And when you get to the point where you can, click on Finished Adding People. When you say you're finished adding people, it's going to come up with an invoice and it's going to say you owe $30. So you want to put in this code, OTC space tech, all in uppercase. And once you apply this code, it should change your balance due to 0. And then you can click register or finish or whatever.
I can make, I clicked this name.
Is that you in?
Yeah. It's just like,
So that's me. Okay, so now this website is where we are. So it's on email search. So it's yeah. So just use this screen on your watch.
So obviously they're applying.
You're okay. Yeah, you'll have questions as you go through.
you want us to put our school email?
Yeah, let's use your school email, and then your category is attendee, and the full-time student non-AITP. While Dylan's getting stuff entered, tonight, if you notice, I don't know if you're watching, but there's a meetup tonight. Tiffany posted it to the Slack channel. Let's see what time it is. $6 o'clock at the E Factory. They're talking about Docker. Have any of you ever heard of Docker? Docker is super awesome. Have any of you ever used a virtual machine? Well, Docker takes virtual machines to a whole new level, and it lets you create a virtual machine where you could say, I want a virtual machine that's running Windows 10, and I want it to have the Java development kit, this version. I want it to have NetBeans, this version. I want it to have all this software installed. Once you create that Docker instance, you could just run it. So no matter what computer you're on, you can just connect to Docker through the cloud and run that Docker instance, and it'll basically download that virtual machine to the machine you're on. You'll have all the software that you said was part of this Docker instance. So it's kind of what companies are moving to be like a step above just using virtual machines. So it's some really neat stuff. Again, I can't go to those because they have food. So you guys can go. It'll be great. All right, I'm going to close this. How are we doing? Dylan, how are you? What do you need?
I'm just at where it's like the submit payment.
Oh, okay, and you're putting in this OTC tech code to make it say 0.
Okay.
All in uppercase, OTC space tech. All right, thank you, sir. You want to do C#? I was trying to find our assignment. They're getting kind of crazy. Okay, that's not it. Okay, I found it. Our Palindrome assignment. It says 8 hours left, August 14th, making people crazy. I've got to get in this section. Sorry, I'm not in this course. So what I've seen is, in general, that people that are working hard on the REPL courses are being able to accomplish things a little bit more. So for this week, there are a couple of courses that I made unoptional that will be an assignment because it's just being really helpful for people. So some of that will be to go back and do all of this one, which you guys might already be done with. But we're going to kind of take a look at this Palindrome assignment. Now, I know that you didn't get a chance to watch the video when we're talking about methods. A method is just a function or a subroutine, a module. So in our 120 class, if you've taken the 120 class, you know they talk about modular programming and how we might have a main method that calls like an input method, process method, and output. In each of those are modules. And we know different programming languages call these modules different things. Right? Some programming languages call them subroutines and functions. In Java, we call these modules methods. And that's the only name for them. So we don't have some other name for different kinds. They're all just methods. So no matter what, it's just a method. And when we're working with modules, we're splitting up the logic of our program into logical pieces so that we're separating it out so that each piece is more manageable and each piece is more understandable and each piece is more controllable, and I can assign different people each piece, right? So by being modular, we get a lot of benefits besides the fact that we've split up our code into its logical functions. So when we're working with Java, when we create a module, we're going to have a method header. The header for a Java module is always going to start with an access level. It could be public, it could be private. If we leave that off, which one do you think is the default? What? Public? What do you guys think? Is public usually a default? Public means everybody can do anything they want. So let's try it as we're creating modules and see which one is the default. Make sure we know. So first, this access level. Then after our access level, we have a return type. And that means, is this module going to send any data back? Is it doing any sort of function that produces output? If it has output, what data type is that output? So I might have a return type of int or string, or I could have a return type of void if this method doesn't return any data. It doesn't have anything that it needs to send back to somebody else. Then I'm going to have my method name. This is the name I give it. Could be do stuff or input or whatever I've decided I want to call that method. Now after my method name, I'm going to have a set of parentheses, open and close parentheses. These open and close parentheses could contain parameters. Parameters are just the input to my method. So just like a program is going to have input, do some processing, and produce some output, a method is exactly the same. It's just like a little teeny bit version of a program. It could have input, its parameters, can do some processing, and it can have output as a return type. So I could have a lot of parameters in my parameter list. We'll get to them. But that's the end then of my method header. Now, after my method header, I have an opening curly brace and all of the code that goes with that method, with that module. And then a closing curly brace at the end. So when we're creating methods, we can see a lot of code looking at Java that looks really confusing, but it's really all exactly the same. It's all just these certain things: the access level, the return type, the method name, and then any parameters. Now, of course, anytime I say that's all there is to it, there's always something else, right? We could also have a keyword static. And we'll talk about that as we create methods and what that changes and how it updates things. So let's look at our assignment here. And if you already have the palindrome done, that's great. We want to hear from you about how you did it and how you accomplished it. But there's a couple of things to talk about first. Because I wasn't here, wasn't able to really make sure everybody was clear on this. But we want to reverse a number, not a string. So sometimes, if you were being really aggressive in figuring this out and you did some searching online, you might have found some solutions that worked with strings. We're not really working with strings right now, so that's not really the way we want to go. We want to use math and a loop to figure out if a number is a palindrome. So I want the online class to be able to see this. So I'm going to try to do it. Let's see what I can do here. If I could get the smart notebook thing going, maybe. I might be able to draw. Okay, we'll see if we can do that. So, if I want to do it with numbers, let's say, what do we have? 141, we use that number. Is that number a palindrome? Okay, it's the same forward as it is backwards, right? So thinking about it from a math standpoint, nothing to do with computer programming, just a math and an integer here. How could I get the first digit of that number? Is there math I could do that would let me know what that first digit is? Don't you tell him, Zach. Okay. What about that modulus command? Remember it when we were talking about math? We haven't really done a lot of math. This program gives us a good opportunity. That modulus command, if you remember, returns the remainder after a division. Is there something I could divide that number by where a remainder would give me that first digit? 10? So what would the answer to that be? Do we need to do it in Java or something and figure it out? You know what we could do? I could open the Python emulator here and just type it in. 141 modulus 10. The answer is 1. So we pulled out the first digit, right, of that number. So now we know that the number 1 is our ones digit. It's jumping on me. Ah. It's going crazy. So that's our ones digit. It needs calibration bad. So now, the next thing that I could do, math-wise then, is if I took 141 and divided by 10, I would get 14. So that's what's left over if I take that ones digit away from that number, right? 14. So now if I did the same thing again, took 14 modulus 10, that would give us our 4, right? So that's our tens digit. And then if I took 14 and divided by 10, I would have my 1 left over. So in my 1 last time then, 1 modulus 10, it's going to give me 1, and 1 divided by 10, it's going to give me 0. So it looks like if I were to set up some sort of loop and just keep doing these things over and over, I would be able to figure out what those digits are. The ones digit, the tens digit, the 100s digit. Now, that doesn't put them back together in the wrong direction for us. We're going to have to do some additional math to do that. So this is the kind of problem solving that's the fun stuff when you're a programmer. So I don't want you to get to thinking, well, this is craziness. It is a little bit of craziness, isn't it? Because it's really fun to figure this kind of stuff out, these patterns, but it can be pretty tough, especially when modulus is something that you hadn't really thought about using before. It's not a normal math thing. Zach and I were talking about it before class started, and like he said, whenever you're in algebra and stuff, they're wanting you to use those decimal numbers. They don't care about remainders and integers and things like that. So it's not the kind of math that we've done a lot, that we have a lot of practice in. But it is really great to think about this problem and solving this problem and thinking about how you could use the modulus. So what if I asked you to tell me if a number is even? Could you use the modulus command to accomplish that? How so? Couldn't I just do modulus 2? And if my result is 0, I had an even number? Because I'm just looking for that remainder. So think about that, because that modulus command can be really, really handy in trying to solve some problems like this, make your life a whole lot easier than it was without the modulus. And you've gone all this time in your life without using a modulus command. You didn't think it would be that helpful. But it can be really, really handy. So let's think about this with that kind of idea that we can pull those digits out using that modulus command and see if we can create this program. Now I'm going to minimize this for a sec and look at our specifications. So in the specifications, you're supposed to create an app that tests integers as palindromes. We need these two methods. And that's why it says in the specifications that we have to have these specific headers. So we know exactly what we need. We've got it here in REPL that we want to have one method named reverse and one method named isPalindrome. We're going to use the reverse method to call the isPalindrome to see if the number is actually a reverse of itself. Now, do you guys want to write this in REPL or do you want to use NetBeans? NetBeans? Okay. And we'll copy it into REPL. So let's start with NetBeans. So I want to create a new project here. And down where it says create main class, that's the area I'm going to select. And I'm going to tell it to name that main class main with an uppercase M. Now I don't want my project name to be Java Application 6. I'll make it Palindrome. And then I'll fix my main class again, because I should have done that first. Now I've obviously already created a palindrome. So I'll make mine palindrome new. Keep trying. So as you go through the REPL assignments, you'll see that they're going to take you to the textbook and ask you to look at some of the information in the textbook, because in our textbook, they have a really nice method created that prompts a user for input. So for this program, we're going to need to ask the user what their number is, right? So we do need some input from our user. So let's try and do it kind of the same way and create a method for that. We'll just jump right in and use methods like crazy. So first thing I want to do in my program here is add my import statement. For my scanner. I think it's a little bit bigger. Okay, so my scanner is ready to go. I'm going to use it. I think I should change some of these comments though, right? So I'm going to get rid of this top header comment. And then this middle one where it's got the author stuff, I'm going to add a little bit more. Some of the comment data is going to be things that Java wants, like this @author. Some of it is stuff that I want, so that as I'm grading, I know for sure who's I'm working with. So make sure to put your name there instead of mine. So my purpose is just going to say, check to see if an integer is a palindrome. Did it get really hot out there? There's bugs in here like crazy. Or is it cold out and they're all trying to get warm? Is it winter? The bugs are coming in? Snakes will be next. Okay, comments are good. Got them? go ahead and get rid of these meaningless comments. And I'll put something in here like, this is the main method. So we've been working with this main method all along. Told you from the very beginning that's something you just kind of had to memorize. But now we can start looking at it and seeing, oh, it is a method header. The first thing it has is that access level. It's public. It has that keyword static in it that we're going to get to. But then it says it's void. It doesn't return anything to the operating system. That's what called it. It does have some parameters. It really only has one parameter, and that's an array of string items. We'll be looking at arrays soon, but for now we haven't really looked at those. But we can know that there is a parameter there to this main method. And then we have our opening and closing curly braces, where it's been hard in some cases to keep the code inside those delimiters. But I think everybody's getting used to it, starting to see how they work. It's just so much more confining than some of the other languages. So in our main method, the first thing I want to do is set up our scanner. I'll name this scanner INP and say that it uses system input. Now remember, once we allocate that scanner, we can use it multiple times. We don't have to have additional scanners for different things or anything like that. We'll just use that scanner for everything. Now I want to call a method to set up my input. But let's declare some variables before we do that. We've got our scanner variable here. Let's say we want to declare an integer, and we'll call it user number. And this is the variable that we'll use to hold that input from our user. What do you want to call the variable that's going to hold that number reversed? Do you want it to just be reversed? Is that okay? Okay. Let's go ahead and set our reversed variable an initial value of 0. So we know that it's already set up. I lost it. There we go. I'm checking to see if we need any other variables. I think that we do. We need one more that's going to be our remainder. And we'll just be using it as kind of a temporary holding place. I'm going to go ahead and initialize it to 0 also. Now for our input, I'm going to jump down and create our input method. So I'm going to find my closing curly brace that ends my main, and I'll put a comment on there. That's the end of the main method. Again, the closing curly brace comments just kind of help us keep track of where we are in our code. Not required or anything, just kind of helpful when we're trying to get used to these curly braces. Now I'm going to declare a new method, our input method. So this method is going to be public. I'm going to call it from my main, so I'm going to have to make it static. But I'm going to leave that keyword out for now because I want you to see what happens if we don't use it. Now, this method is going to return an integer. Whatever integer the user types in, that's what it's going to return. We'll name this method getInput. Our getInput method needs to use that scanner. So I'm going to say in our parameters that we require an input of a scanner. And we're going to call that scanner in. We could actually declare our scanner down in this method also. So as you look at some of the rebels, there are some that are just complete duplicates of each other, just that show you how you can declare things in different places. So some of that stuff is important, and it's hard for us to get enough experience in class for it to really make sense to us, but we do need that practice. So in our get input method, we want to prompt, oh, I can do that shortcut, S out, tab, because I'm in NetBeans, yay. So the first thing I want to do is output a prompt. Please enter an integer. Now our integer, if it's only 1 digit, it's obviously not a palindrome. Do we want to say anything about that on our prompt, or we're just going to leave it up to them? Leave it up to them. They can handle it. Please enter an integer. I'm going to put a colon at the end of that prompt and a space. Now in our Rebels and a lot of other places, when we issue a prompt, we've been using the print command. So I'm going to change that from println to just print. If I use print, the cursor is going to be sitting there, the blinking cursor is going to be sitting there right after that space character for the user to type in data. If I use println, the cursor is going to be sitting down under this prompt on the next line, waiting for the user to type data. So it doesn't matter a whole bunch, but it is one of those detail kind of things that makes a difference in whether it's going to match the required output. Okay, so that's my prompt. Now, when I am working with a method, I keep saying I want to return some data. So let's think about what a method is. I've got this card here, and I'm going to say that I've got a scanner on my card. I'm going to pass that as input to this method, my get input method. Samantha's going to be my method. Now I don't know what Samantha does because I'm just passing control off to her. So Samantha, write down a number for us that our method produces and then give it back to me. So I don't know what this method does. Doesn't matter to me. All I know is I'm going to get a number back from it. And she gave me a number. So now, when I get this number back from her, that's the return value from that method. Samantha gave me a 5. If I want to keep that, I need to put it in a variable somewhere, right, to save that value. And that's exactly what I'm going to do from this method. So to make this method return that number, send it back to me, I'm going to use the return keyword. Now, what do I want to return? I want to return whatever the user types. So inp dot next int now when I do that, INP is the name of my scanner, but yet I've got an error. Can you mouse over that? What does it say the problem is? Mine says it doesn't know what INP is. Well, I have it up here. Is that what I called it when I passed it as input to my method? No. So I have to make it IN, because that's what I called it in this method. So it's just the same as me passing it to her. She can call it whatever she wants. Now I've got another error because I need like open and closing parentheses. Right? That looks good. So now with 2 lines of code, we're going to do that get input. We're going to prompt the user, whatever they type, we're going to read in using our next integer method of the scanner object and return that to our user. So now we've got to call our method, because if we don't call it, it's not going to do anything. So I'm going to go back to our main method. Now in our main method, we're going to put in a call to get input. Now the number, the place we want to save that number is user number. We already created that variable saying this is where we're going to save the number that the user gives us. So we're going to take that return value, put it in user number. What are we going to get that return from? Our get input method. So a couple of things. First of all, I want to focus on this part right here. This is my call to my method. The method name is the same. So when I want to call a method, I just write its name. Now our get input method said, I need a scanner. So here's where we're passing it, that scanner. Here's the scanner we allocated, you can use it. Now when our get input gets done, it's going to return an integer to us. We're going to save that integer in user number. So the place we want to save the output is going to come before the equal sign. Now I'm still getting an error. What does that error say? If I mouse over it, my pop-up says, non-static method cannot be referenced from a static context. What does that mean? It means this main method is declared static. So it can't call a method that's not static. So I'm going to add that static keyword. Now, static means many things, but basically it says this method can only be loaded in memory one time. So when we run this program, it doesn't matter if I were to run it, use my get input method from many different places, they would all go to the same get input method that was just loaded in memory one time. This will mean a lot more to us as we get into more involved things. But right now, we've got some good code in here. So we're calling our new get input method. We're passing it our scanner object. We're expecting some return value that we're going to save in our user number variable. Let's output our user number. And I want to test there. I'm going to go ahead and put a comment on my get input method and a get input method. Now you should already be seeing how we can save a lot on code by using methods, because we've had a lot of different examples so far where we've prompted the user for input, and then we've gone into some sort of loop and we keep prompting them for input over and over, and we had to duplicate those lines of code. Now if we just call a method instead, we can just call that method in each of those places instead of having to have those 3 or 4 lines of code. So we go from 3 or 4 lines of code to 1, but it does save. Redundancy. Okay, so run it. Does it work? It's prompting me to enter an integer. I'll enter, right now it doesn't matter because we don't have any code doing any palindrome stuff. But notice how it is all working, that our get input method is displaying the prompt. When we type in the number is getting returned back to our main method where we're saving it and then outputting it. Is everybody's working okay? I'm going to make you do some sort of thumbs up on the Zoom thing. Raise your hand. I'll get it. Okay. Awesome. So now what do we need to do? We've got this number. Our REPL assignment says we have to have these 2 methods. I think I'm going to copy them. You don't have to. I'll leave it on the screen so you can type it in. I'm going to copy from here so that I don't mess us up. Now, I want to place these new method headers after my get input method has ended. and the static keyword was already included in them, but they're upset. They're making NetBeans mad because we don't have any open and closing curly braces. So I'll go ahead and put those in. And I've still got a bit of an error on each one. And if you look at that error, you'll see it's because we don't have a return statement yet, which is true. We haven't done that yet.
I'm getting a different error.
What are you getting?
It says it can't find or load time request.
I'm the same thing. I had what? Same thing.
That's the receipt.
Okay, so you're okay.
Those are the ones we all have. Okay, good. So in our instructions, it says that our reverse method is going to try to reverse this number. Well, we know from what we were looking at before that we can calculate the remainder by taking our user number and dividing by 10. Gosh, look, it's being all mad at me about all of our variables. Cannot find variable, all sorts of problems here. So in our method header, it says that we're supposed to be passing this method an integer that's a number. So I'm going to assume that's our user number. So instead of the variable name user number, I'm going to put number there. But our remainder is a different issue. We have a problem there because our remainder is declared in our main method, but we want to use it down here in our reverse method. And in the method header that we were given in the assignment, it didn't say to pass it. So we know we could add that in as another parameter and pass it as input, but that's not going to give us the answer that the assignment wanted. So what we need to do is, instead of declaring remainder in our main method, let's delete it up there, and we'll declare it in this reverse method. Now, there's lots of different ways we can declare variables in different places. If it works, it's probably right. There's going to be some ways that are better than others, but in general, if you get it to work, then you're doing okay. That's what we wanted. So now some other things that I could do here, looking at my stuff, what else am I going to need? I'm going to need that reverse number. So I'm just going to go ahead and move it too. I was thinking about the variables I needed in creating the main, but they're really going to be more needed down here. than they are in our main method now that we're moving things around a little bit. I'm going to set up one more variable. And I'm going to set this palindrome variable equal to our starting number so that we kind of have it saved somewhere, that starting number, because we're going to be messing it up. Now, when I said that the remainder is going to be equal to our number divided by 10, is that right? Shouldn't that be modulus to get that remainder? Catch me. I'm messing you up. So now we'll know what the remainder is of the very first digit. We should be pulling out the ones digit basically in this case. So if we're getting our ones digit out, then let's see, how could we add that to our reversed number? Our reversed number is started out as 0, but now we want to change it to add in this digit that we just extracted from our original number. So I'm kind of peeking here at another formula, and then after we get it in, we'll look at it. Reverse stuff. So I started out with 141 modulus 10. That's going to give me my remainder number. Then I'm doing this formula here that says whatever your reverse number is, which is 0 right now, 0 times 10 is 0, plus the remainder. So we're going to end up with a number 1 in our reversed variable this first time, right? Do you see that? Math, math. Now, what's left over for us to keep converting, we're going to put in our palindrome variable. So we're going to say it is now going to be palindrome divided by 10. So that's our next step there, where we were dividing by 10 to get the digits that are left. Now I'm still missing a return statement because I'm not quite done here. So let's put in some print line statements just for debugging. We don't want to print out in this method, but for now I'd like to print some things out. So I'm going to say our original number is number. And then let's say our reversed, or how about remainder first? Remainder right now and then we'd like to print out our palindrome. And then I'm going to satisfy the compiler by just typing in return 0. We're going to fix that. That's not how we're going to leave it, but hopefully we can get it happy with us. I'm having this error. Are you guys having the same error? Is it just me? about this one on this palindrome line that says missing return statement?
You might have that error on the print statement.
Do my print statement? Because I've got my return statement down here. So I'm thinking that palindrome variable name is bad. I'm going to try just changing it. Why do you not like that line of code? Okay. I'm going to leave it as we had it initially and see if Java gives us an error when we try to compile. Sometimes it can get a little confused. Now on our is palindrome, I'm going to return true, just again to satisfy that return statement requirement. Now it all of a sudden is happy about everything. So sometimes NetBeans just is that way. Now that's all great and good, but I haven't actually done anything in my main to call this method, our palindrome method, right? So I'm going to go back up to my main. And after I output my user number, I'm going to call our reverse method. Now our reverse method needs a number, and we want to pass in the number the user typed in, and that's in our user number variable. Notice that even though reverse returns an integer, I'm not saving it anywhere. I'm not putting it in a variable. That's totally up to me when I'm using my code. I did save the output from get input, but I'm not saving the output from our reverse method yet. I just want to run it. The reason I want to run it is because we should see some debugging output come out. These statements that we've put in to print out some information, we should be able to see if things are working properly. So let's run this. And I'm going to put in my 141. And I should see output so far says the original number is 141. The remainder was 1. The palindrome is 14. That all looks good, but I'd also like to see that reversed number. So I'm going to add that in to my output statements. So after I print the remainder, I think is where I want that. Make sure it's looking right also. Good, so let's try it. Okay, so our remainder that we're working with is 1. Our reversed number so far is 1. And our palindrome is 14. That's what we have left still to convert. All right, so we haven't gotten that quite figured out yet. Now, one change that I need to make in this code is up here where we calculate our remainder, instead of using our original number variable, let's change it to use our palindrome, because that's the number that's going to be changing. So that way, we'll, the next time through, our next iteration, we'll divide 14 by 10 instead of that original 141. So to me, this looks like I could put it in a loop and have this all get accomplished in a loop, right? So let's try it. I'm going to use a for loop. I could use a while loop. I could use either one. A for loop is for when you kind of have an idea of how many times you're going to execute something. Now, if we knew beforehand how many digits were in this palindrome, we could use a for loop because we would have that information. But since we're not really calculating how many digits are in this number, we probably want to use a while loop. And we're going to say we want to loop while our palindrome, that number we're bringing down all the time, getting less and less digits, while that palindrome is not equal to 0. Once it equals 0, we're done. We figured it all out. We've got the answer. We're good. So I want to put all of this code in my loop except for the return statement. And in order to indent, I'm going to select all those lines of code that are within those curly braces, and I'm going to press Tab so that they're indented. So looking at our loop now, our loop body, these 3 lines of code are doing all our work, right? But these 4 are helping us with our debugging so that we can see if things are really working the way we think they should. So let's try it now. We should see those output messages show us the whole process. I'm going to run it, and I'm going to put my integer in, 141. And sure enough now, I've got to start up at the beginning, but I'm going to see that my original number prints out each time, so I can tell when I'm starting a new iteration of the loop. So the first time through our loop, our original number is 141, the remainder is 1, our reversed number is 1, and the leftover palindrome that we still need to test is 14. The next time then, we were working with 14 to start, even though our original number is 141. Our remainder was 4. When we reverse that number, now we're ending up with 1, 4, which is sounding good. And the palindrome that we have left to convert is 1. The third time we go into our loop for our hundredths digit, basically, we get the remainder out 1, which is right, that's our digit. And our reverse number now is completely assembled and it looks correct. But that number is a palindrome. So let's try it on a number that's not and see if all of our logic is working properly. So I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to put in something, I don't know, 2456 or something, a bigger number. Now with my number that went up into the thousands digits, I start out still in the same way. Using that modulus command gets me the 1s digit, and what I have left is the 345. Then the next time through the loop, it gives me the 5, our 10s digit, and it leaves our reversed number, looking good so far, 6 first, then 5. We have this 34 left over. We see when we use the modulus command on that we end up with 4 is a remainder. We add that 4 to our reversed number, and that leaves us 3. For our last number, our thousands digit, that 3, we pull it out as the remainder, add it to the end of our reversed number, and our palindrome is 0 now, so that ends our loop. And so we've now reversed that number. Now, there's a lot of reasons I wanted to show you guys this one. First of all, it's good because it does use some methods. We're not quite done with it. But also so that, again, you could see the math happening. And because Java is kind of a language that's sort of oriented this way, where, you know, they want you to think about things a little bit differently and come up with an alternative solution. So it works out really good, and you can use this kind of logic for a lot of different things. Let's try finishing it up. So we're supposed to use this is palindrome to return things. And how could we do that? Right now it only has the number as something that it's using as a parameter. Let's ignore it for now, and we'll come back to it in a minute. So let's say instead that we want to return something to our main, whether this is true or not true. There's a lot of different ways we could do it. I'm just kind of up in the air. Which is the best way? Let's change this method header from returning an integer to returning a Boolean. And then before we return, let's put an if statement in. If our number equals a reversed number, then we would want to return true. It is a palindrome. Otherwise, we want to return false. It's not a palindrome. We'll fix that in a minute to use that other method too, because we're violating our rules here. Now, we already in our main have code to call this reverse. So we could use that in an if statement. If reverse user number, because our reverse method is going to return true or false. So we can use it in an if statement as a condition. So I'm saying call reverse, send it user number. If it returns true, this if statement is true. If reverse returns false, this if statement is false. So if it's true, we want to output some sort of message that the number is a palindrome. And I want to look at REPL and make sure I get that message a little bit formatted closely to how it's supposed to be. Okay, so our original number and then is a palindrome. So I want to output our user number first, then the message is a palindrome. If that's not true, I want to output our user number and the message is not a palindrome. This one definitely has some challenging things. We've used some loops that you guys are really just getting started with. We've used some if statements that we haven't had a lot of experience with either. But remember, that's how we get experience, is just trying and struggling and getting through it, and that's how we remember things. You never remember those really good things, only those painful things. So let's see if it's working. I'm going to start with 141, and then we're going to have to go in and take out all of our debugging code. At the end, I see my message, 141 is a palindrome. So that looks good. Now I want to try one that's not. I'll do 241. And at the end, I see 241 is not a palindrome. So good. How's everybody's doing? Is it doing things like that? Problem? So everything looks really good so far. Need to take out that debugging code. So let's go get rid of all of our extra. Oh, see you there.
Sorry, I think there's something with this if statement I just got lost.
You could just take this and return. No, I have other stuff.
So get rid of the on.
On this? Yes, yeah. You're just return. So then it would see that.
Parentheses around. Honestly, everything else, the lack of the short yeah, because I think actually create.
Okay. So let's get rid of our debugging code.
Are we going to comment it out?
Do you want to comment it out? That's a good idea. So what was our debugging code? First of all, in our main method, after we called get input, we output that user number. That was just for debugging, so I'm going to comment that out. Now the rest of our debugging output is in our reverse method. So I'm going to comment out these 4 lines, but I'm not going to do it //////. I'm going to select them, right? And I'm going to look up here for something that will comment them all out, like source.
Not that high up. Go
Huh?
down.
Go down?
Yeah.
Is there one down here?
No, farther over. Keep
Where?
going. No, other direction.
Where?
Right there.
That one? To find the picture. It is also on source too. Toggle comment. So toggle comment will turn the comment on and off. So will that icon where you can uncomment and recomment things. the little green N. I'll still forget what it looks like. All right, so that should have gotten rid of all of our debugging code. Now, Jesse mentioned something too. Do I have to have this whole if structure? Is there something that I could do to make that more compact code since I'm returning a Boolean here? Could I just return the value of that comparison? I could say return number equal reversed, and I could leave the parentheses or get rid of the parentheses. But either way, I'm telling Java, do that comparison and just return whether the outcome of that comparison is true or false. So that's just a really nice shortcut. And a lot of the code that you'll see from Java programmers is going to be that way, where the comparison itself is going to generate the return value. So very, very handy. So everything's looking really good. The only problem is I'm not using this is palindrome method like I need to. Let's look back at REPL and see what it said we were supposed to do. It says, use the reverse method to implement is palindrome. A number is a palindrome if its reversal is the same as itself. So I could do a lot of things here to change it up. I'm thinking, having a hard time coming up with one that would work good for all of it. Give you guys those things. Let's try setting this back to int, because we're supposed to return an integer out of our reverse method. And then on our return for this, I want to return our palindrome. Is that our reversed number, or is it in our reversed variable? Because we want to return that reversed number. So would that be palindrome or reversed? Reversed. That looks good. So what if my is palindrome method called this reverse method? In my, oh yes, sir?
What did you do just before you changed that to return reverse?
I commented out these, our debugging output.
Change the boolean to an if.
Oh, yes, right up there. Thank you. Now, lots of ways we could do things, but we now have this really good reverse method that's doing all of the reversing of our number. Our is palindrome method is going to have the number passed to it. So we could use our is palindrome to call our reverse method. So in our reverse method, we're going to return a number. I'll call it reversed again. So now my is palindrome method takes the number that it was passed, uses that number to call our reverse method, and our reverse method returns that reversed value. So now we can return from our is palindrome, does reverse equal number. So we just kind of had to split that up a little bit to implement both of those methods like the instructions said we had to. And it might not be the exact order, but I promise your teacher won't care. Here's the end of our is palindrome method. Now we need to change one other thing, and that's in our main. In our main right now, we're calling reverse. We don't want to do that. We've set up our new is palindrome method to take care of that reversing thing. So in our main, let's change it to if is palindrome. And then our naming matches a little bit better with our if statement logic, because we named that method kind of, is it something? And so that goes along with our if statement there, that we can say, is it a palindrome based on that original user number? If so, output that message. Now, I've got this little hint here that says invert if. Alt-Enter shows hints. Saying, why would you want to invert that if? I'll try it. It just made it a not. So it's up to you. You know, I'm not a negative person. I don't like nots. So I wouldn't want to reverse that if. But NetBeans is super negative. It's always taking that negative path. So it wants us to reverse it. So remember, when you're working with NetBeans, some of those hints aren't super helpful. It still has that same hint if you want to reverse it. So you can kind of use that for you and change things around and let NetBeans take care of it, moving things back and forth. And it's still giving me that warning no matter how I have it. It's just like, this is another alternative for you. So be careful with the Alt-Enter hints that NetBeans gives you. Make sure you kind of save first, because it can kind of mess up your code. And its hint might not be what you had in mind at all, or it might be great. It might fix everything. So we made a lot of changes. Let's make sure everything's still working. We should be okay. I'm going to run this. We just shouldn't see all that debugging output. I'm going to try 7887. Oops, not in the right place. Oh, it says it's a palindrome. Try another one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not a palindrome. So you should be in good shape. Is everybody's working okay? Good, good, good. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. I did some searching after I felt a little better, because I knew that it was going to be a really monumental task for you guys to get this program done on your own, and it was going to be hard. So I did some searching, and I found some things, and I found some colleges where they did have this as a beginning assignment. And I found some really interesting things where there were some colleges that were offering this as like the second assignment for their Java class. And they truly expected people to have to spend 40 to 60 hours figuring this out on their own, beating their heads up against the wall. So I want you guys to realize some of that struggling has to happen. You have to do that, beating your head against the wall a little bit as a programmer to learn. And I want you to think about it the same way. Daniel that was over here, you know, that's been, not this Daniel, but our other Daniel that's been absent all the time, came in yesterday and he was talking about it, and he said, I'm doing SQL and I'm spending like 40 hours a week figuring it out and I don't have time. I said, I understand, you know, because that's how things are. But he's actually was a music major. And so it was nice because I was able to compare that for him. And he said, you know, I'm spending all these hours figuring out the SQL stuff, and I thought I could do SQL and Java together, but I can't because I'm spending too much time on that one. And he said, you know, this just doesn't seem right. Well, we went into the fact that he didn't have the proper prerequisites and all those kinds of things. That matters, right? But the big deal is he's a drummer. I said, when you were learning how to play the drums, how much time did you spend practicing to become a drummer? And he said, you know, when I was young, I spent a lot of time practicing. I said, well, now you want to become a programmer. It's going to take as much practice as becoming a drummer. That's the way it is. And so we just have to be prepared for that. And again, when you guys are starting out, I know it's so hard for you to know when you should reach out for help and when you should keep struggling. And that's just not a question that anybody else can answer for you. So my thought is, if you're reaching the point of overload, you need to reach out for help. So it doesn't matter if it's only been 10 minutes, you know, if it's been 10 hours, reach out for help and we'll figure out what's going on and get you moving again in a little bit more of a direction. So you guys are doing great. Don't expect yourself to be able to perform miracles. It takes a little while. And that's all of the stuff that we've looked at so far. We haven't had a chance to practice a ton of it. Now, I hope that you're practicing at home. I know that a lot of you are, and looking at those exercises that are in your textbook at the end of each chapter, and looking at some other things, anything that you think of that you'd like to figure out in programming, try in Java just to get that additional practice. But this one should be ready now for you to copy into REPL. Does it match? You tried it? Is it okay? So I think you're good to go on that. A couple of things before we go, though. When we're coding in Java, in any other programming language, there's always a lot of discussion about comments. And I've kidded around in the years that I've been teaching. I always teach Java 2 online, and it always surprises me how many people take Java 2 online. It's kind of hard, and how well they do. But you know, there's a lot of people in that class that I have to keep taking off points every single assignment because they don't put comments in. And there's a lot of people that are that way, that are like, my code is self-documenting. No, it isn't. Your code is crap. Comment your code. So your code can be the most beautiful thing in the world. I want to see comments. Now, so far, I've been taking it easy on you because we've been using REPL. REPL doesn't do good with comments. It's kind of hard to get them in there. That's one reason I want to choose NetBeans. But I want to show you the kind of comments that we're going to start having after this assignment. And right here, let's go down to our reverse method. Now I'll go way to the bottom to the is palindrome. I already have this one comment above it, but I want to show you a different kind of comment that Java likes. See if I can remember how. That's it. So I want to do 1/ and then 3 asterisks and then press enter. When you do that, NetBeans will create this comment block for you. Notice that this comment block has the @ fields, which are meaningful in Java. And it also includes the parameter that I needed in my method automatically when I do that. So now I could add a little bit more to this comment and say something like, determine if the number is a palindrome. And then this comment, because it's this special format and it has these @ variables in it, is actually meaningful to Java. And if we were to compile this program and use it in another place, we could see those comments and they would be kind of documentation for our program. So as I kind of mention them as the semester goes, that's why, because there's things that are really important. Because developers don't like to do comments, the powers that be, the software gods, have started making comments more important so that they get generated in your compiled code and other programmers can see them and they become really, really meaningful. So I don't want you to comment the world. I don't expect a comment for every line of code, but I do want you to put enough comments in there that it could be meaningful for somebody else to look at. Like, especially think about how we did that mod 10 stuff in that loop. If you just looked at that program without us talking about it beforehand, think about how confusing it would be to figure out what's going on there, where a little comment could say something like, use modulus to get the 1s digit or something like that, you know, anything like that that you wanted to help. Questions?
When you try to submit it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having it works, but it doesn't work because it says your output is teacher expected.
What's it mad at you about?
Like 5,145.
Click on yours. Mismatch there.
Yeah. Just so people that
But you guys get that turned in and then get out of here, and I'll see you on Thursday, and I will post the link to that video.
change that. The entry positive. Well, on the old stuff, on the new stuff.
Like if someone comes and works on the jewels, like, wolves, you do?
So I, there's, so I have to remember stuff that we use now.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
And I'll sit down the code review, yeah, I'll sit down the code review, go and stuff, but you know, take time, that's what
So that one.
so that was your Excel documented. So right as national and all the old stuff is like currently in use. We comment the code and we add changes. But on the new stuff, the API, there are no comments on any of the code. They want it to be like so. They want you to look at the code. Yeah, I guess, but yeah. So, they used to be like comments, now they don't want. I agree with the same. I was looking at doing that all night, all the time. I was spending. Because I looked at it just today and I was like, I'm just gonna try to go. We go to class today and learn. Well, see you later, bro. Oh, really? It doesn't make any sense to me because even with like the advanced language like C# too, like comments saved my life, knowing like exactly when I would go back to the program. And American National has companies in like every state, so the programs are huge and no comments.
Yes, sir.
I think I fixed everything. and
Did you?
submitted it, and I got my output right,
Awesome.
but
Let me end this thing and see.
I just didn't think you had a chance to look at it yet.
I probably haven't.